January 30th, 1933. The fate of a nation shifts in a single hour. Adolf Hitler walks into the Reich Chancellery and claims the title of Chancellor. Democracy does not fade away quietly. It is strangled. Outside, the streets belong to the stormtroopers. 3 million men wear the brown shirt. They carry batons, brass knuckles, and knives. They are the SA. For years, they broke skulls and disrupted rallies to pave Hitler's bloody road to power. The newsreels record the scene. Torches burn in a continuous river of fire through the Brandenburg Gate. The sound of jackboots on pavement is deafening. Why did the new chancellor accept this violence? It was necessary for the ascent. But power changes the equation. At first glance, these men are the regime's most loyal soldiers, but in reality, they are walking targets. Events accelerated. Less than 2 years passed. Hitler made a cold calculation. He did not merely fire his allies, he liquidated them. The order went out for a single night of treachery. One name on the death list stands out: Karl Ernst. His rise was improbable. He started as a hotel bellboy and a bouncer in rough nightclubs. He ended as a commander of a paramilitary empire. He believed he was safe. He was wrong. There was no mistake. The system he helped construct turned its sights on him. The arrest was swift. The execution was brutal. He died shouting loyalty to the man who ordered his death. But to understand the end, we must look at the beginning. Karl Ernst was born in September 1st, 1904. On this date, Karl Ernst was born into the gray, soot-stained industrial districts of Berlin. He emerged from the wreckage of Imperial Germany with zero assets, no money, no titles. He possessed only 2 things: blind ambition and a capacity for violence. His father was a former cavalryman who survived the trenches of the Great War, but peace brought no rest. The father took a job as a hired bodyguard for Friedrich Flick. This was no ordinary employer. Flick was an industrial titan. His factories produced the steel and weapons that would later feed Hitler's war machine. Young Ernst did not follow an academic path. His education stopped dead at elementary school. Between 1918 and 1921, he tried to play by the rules. He scraped through a commercial apprenticeship. He learned the export trade. He filed documents. He sat at a desk. But the quiet life of a clerk was a prison. Why did he keep quitting? He had the skills to work, but his hunger for power was too loud to ignore. He cycled through jobs rapidly: a hotel bellboy carrying luggage, a commercial clerk stamping forms. And then, he took a position that would define his reputation. He became a bouncer. The venue was a gay nightclub in Berlin's decadent underground scene. The footage from this era captures the atmosphere: heavy smoke, dim lights, and illicit deals in corners. Ernst stood at the door and controlled who entered. This was not just employment, it was dangerous leverage. Enemies took note of his presence there. Whispers about his personal life began to circulate. These rumors followed him for years. They would eventually serve as the justification for his execution. But this was only the beginning. 1923. Germany's economy collapsed into the abyss of hyperinflation. Banknotes became worthless paper. People burned currency to heat their homes. Political chaos consumed the streets. In this anarchy, Ernst found his true calling. He joined the Sturmabteilung, the SA. This was Hitler's paramilitary terror force. The SA did not appear out of thin air. It rose from the ashes of the Freikorps. These were independent bands of World War I veterans. They were scarred men. They refused to accept the humiliation of Germany's defeat. By 1921, roughly 400,000 men had joined these militant groups. They did not want peace. They wanted targets. They channeled their rage into street battles against communists and anyone blamed for the national collapse. At first glance, a gymnastics and sports division, but in reality, a uniformed death squad. They adopted the distinctive brown shirts. It was a uniform of intimidation. Their mission was crystal clear. They were Hitler's personal security, but defense was secondary. The primary goal was offense. They were ordered to crush opposition parties. They did not use arguments. They used fists. They used wooden clubs. Eventually, they used bullets. The sound of marching boots on pavement became the soundtrack of Berlin. But the SA's first major operation was not a victory. It was a catastrophe. November 8, 1923, Hitler mobilized his Brownshirts. They launched the beer hall putsch. The plan was bold: overthrow the government by force. Historical records show the columns of men moved through Munich armed and desperate. They expected a revolution. They found a trap. The attempt collapsed in gunfire and confusion. 16 bodies lay on the Munich pavement. The police did not hesitate. They met the coup attempt with a wall of lead. In the chaotic shootout, 16 stormtroopers and 4 officers bled out on the street. The rebellion collapsed in minutes. Handcuffs replaced the podium. Adolf Hitler was arrested, convicted of high treason, and sentenced to 5 years in Landsberg prison. But did the system hold him? The law demanded a full term, but political backroom deals opened the gates. He served barely 8 months. By February 1925, Hitler was free. He immediately rebuilt the SA. The private army did not just reorganize, it expanded. It moved through Germany like a virus. In 1926, only 6,000 stormtroopers marched at Weimar. But the economy crashed. The Great Depression became fuel for the fire. Desperate, unemployed men exchanged rags for brown uniforms. They wanted purpose. Hitler gave them enemies. By 1930, membership exploded to 60,000. Events accelerated. January 1931, 77,000. November 1931, 221,000. August 1932, 445,000. Archival footage shows the scale. Endless columns of men marching through city centers. The streets are a sea of swastika flags. By April 1934, Hitler held the chancellorship. The SA numbered a staggering 3 million men. The professional German military looked like a toy soldier set next to this giant. Karl Ernst rode this violent wave upward. At first glance, a low-level staffer in Munich, but in reality, a predator waiting for a gap in the ranks. From 1927 to March 1931, he worked at Supreme Leadership Headquarters. But his true opportunity came during the Stennis Revolt. An internal mutiny shook the Berlin SA chaos for some, a ladder for Ernst. When the dust settled, the traitors were purged. Ernst emerged as the winner. In April 1931, he was promoted to adjutant of the Berlin SA. He officially joined the Nazi Party, membership number 456,153. He became the right hand of Wolf Heinrich Graf von Helldorf, the commander of Berlin's stormtroopers. They made a dangerous team. September 12, 1931. The city prepared for the Jewish New Year. Families gathered for celebration. But Ernst and Helldorf had orchestrated a different plan: 1,000 stormtroopers. That was the force that flooded the Kurfürstendamm. It was one of Berlin's most elegant boulevards, a symbol of wealth. But on this day, the pavement turned into a hunting ground. The mob did not come to protest. They organized a savage pogrom. The target was specific: Jews leaving the synagogue and any pedestrian who looked like an enemy. The air filled with the sound of shattering glass and hysterical screaming. Jews die. Beat the Jews dead. The thugs attacked innocent civilians with calculated brutality. They kicked victims on the sidewalks. Blood stained the expensive cobblestones. Authorities finally reacted. They charged Helldorf and Ernst with breach of the peace. Initially, the two went into hiding. They refused to face the police. But when they appeared in court, they had elite protection. Their defense lawyers were Roland Freisler and Hans Frank, men who would soon become the most notorious executioners of the Nazi legal system. November 1931. The judge handed down 6-month prison sentences. Why didn't the punishment stick? The Weimar legal system was already crumbling under pressure. By February 1932, the conviction was overturned. Karl Ernst merely paid a fine. He walked out of the courthouse a free man. Events accelerated. Under Ernst Röhm, the SA was not just growing, it was radicalizing. Röhm, a scarred veteran of the Great War, transformed the Brownshirts into a quasi-military force. He had grand ambitions to replace the regular army. But Röhm carried a fatal vulnerability. In 1931, the bomb exploded. Social democratic newspapers published private letters. In them, Röhm frankly described himself as same-sex oriented. The revelation triggered a massive scandal within the Nazi ranks. At first glance, a private matter, but in reality, a political death sentence. Röhm was not the only one. Many SA leaders shared his orientation, including his deputy Edmund Heines and the freshly acquitted Karl Ernst. Ernst's connection to Paul Röhrbein became the center of Berlin gossip. Röhrbein was a wealthy friend of Röhm, not even a party member. Yet he seemed to hold the keys to power. Critics were merciless. They mockingly called Ernst Frau von Röhrbein. Mrs. Röhrbein. The accusation was clear. Ernst had not earned his rank through merit. He had slept his way to the top. Rumors solidified into conspiracy theories. Enemies spoke of the Röhm-Röhrbein-Ernst Triple Alliance. They painted a picture of a homosexual clique controlling the stormtroopers from the shadows. Resentment boiled over. On June 26, 1931, a Nazi named Walter Bergmann decided to act. He stepped forward for a confrontation, a screaming match in a crowded Berlin pub. That is how the confrontation began. A man cornered Ernst and Röhrbein, shouting over the noise of the crowd. He called them parasites on the party. He called them male prostitutes. He screamed about damn sodomizers dragging the party's reputation to hell. The patrons froze. Ernst didn't just stand there. He swore on his honor. He claimed he was not a homosexual, but the denials changed nothing. The whispers never stopped. Stories circulated about orgies aboard a yacht. The vessel belonged to Erich Honessen. Honessen was a Jewish mystic, a con artist, and a financier who loaned massive sums to high-ranking Nazis. But money bought no loyalty. Honessen's generosity wouldn't save him. Despite the financial favors, Ernst participated in Honessen's murder in 1933. It was a cold, grim betrayal, but this was only the beginning of his rise. By December 1931, Ernst commanded the reorganized SA group of Berlin-Brunenburg. He started as a staff leader, then he became the adjutant. His rank was SA Oberfuhrer. He moved fast. From July 1932 to March 1933, he led the SA Untergruppe of Berlin East. Events accelerated. On March 1, 1933, he received a promotion to SA Gruppenführer. By March 15th, he replaced Helldorf. Now, Ernst was the commander of all SA forces in Berlin and Brandenburg. He controlled every stormtrooper in the German capital. His influence extended to politics. He was elected to the Reichstag multiple times between July 1932 and November 1933. In August, Hermann Göring made a decisive move. He appointed Ernst to the prestigious Prussian State Council. Then came the fire. February 27, 1933. Flames consumed Germany's parliament building. The sky over Berlin turned orange. The Nazis immediately blamed the communists. They claimed a violent revolution was in motion. Hitler exploited the crisis instantly. He pushed through the Reichstag Fire decree. The document was titled The Law for the Protection of the People and State. In practice, it obliterated constitutional rights. Freedom of assembly, speech, and the press were destroyed. Police could arrest anyone without cause. At first glance, a security measure, but in reality, the legal pathway to Nazi dictatorship. Did Ernst light the match? Suspicion fell heavily on him. Some historians believe he led a small SA squad that night. The theory is specific. They moved through underground passages from the Reichstag president's palace into the building to set the blaze. However, the consensus among experts is different. The records point to Marinus van der Lubbe, a Dutch communist. He acted alone as the arsonist. By 1934, the SA had become a political liability. 3 million men. That was the sheer weight of the SA. They outnumbered the Reichswehr, Germany's professional army, by a massive margin. To the generals, this was not a militia. It was a political liability and a direct threat. Ernst Röhm, the leader of the Brownshirts, made no secret of his ambition. He openly advocated for absorbing the regular army into his own ranks. He wanted to be the supreme commander. But the behavior of his troops became a problem. The archives describe the scene: drunken brawls, smashed windows, and unchecked street violence. Homosexuality scandals plagued the leadership. It was messy. It embarrassed Hitler during critical negotiations with the conservative elites. President Paul von Hindenburg and Vice-Chancellor Franz von Papen delivered a cold ultimatum: control the revolutionaries, or face a military coup and martial law. Hitler stood at a crossroads. Why destroy his oldest ally? Röhm had marched with him from the beginning, but the support of the army was essential for total power. Sentimentality had no place here. Heinrich Himmler and Reinhard Heydrich watched from the shadows. As leaders of the SS, the SA's bitter rival, they saw a golden opportunity. In April 1934, the conspiracy began. Along with Hermann Göring, they fabricated a dossier. The lie was specific. They claimed Röhm accepted 12 million Reichsmarks from France to overthrow Hitler. That is $60 million today. On June 24th, SS officers reviewed the forged papers. The evidence of an imminent coup looked irrefutable. Hitler signed the order. Himmler and Göring compiled the lists. They wrote down names of targets inside the SA and outside of it. The ink dried. The night of the long knives was set. Events accelerated. On June 28th, Hitler ordered Röhm to summon his top commanders to Bad Wiessee, a quiet Bavarian spa resort. It was a trap. At first glance, a routine conference, but in reality, an execution ground. On the morning of June 30th, the operation launched. The footage shows black cars tearing through the quiet streets. SS units, commanded by Dachau Commandant Theodor Eicke, raided the hotel. They dragged Röhm and his officers out of bed. The surprise was total. The prisoners were thrown into trucks and transported to Stadelheim prison in Munich. The courtyard of the prison turned into a slaughterhouse. SS execution squads worked efficiently. Most officers were shot immediately. But with Röhm, Hitler hesitated. The pause lasted until July 1st. Then, the order came. Eicke entered the cell. He did not offer a trial. He raised his weapon and fired. The sound of the shot signaled the end of the SA's independence. Evidence suggests Röhm remained loyal to the very end. He believed it was a misunderstanding. But the propaganda machine later painted him as a traitor. The purge spread across the nation. It was not just the Brownshirts who died. General Kurt von Schleicher, the former chancellor, answered his door. Gunmen cut him down instantly. Conservative critics, right-wing nationalists, old enemies, all were eliminated. Official records list at least 90 dead between June 30th and July 6th. Historians estimate the real number reached 200. The regime cleared the board. Karl Ernst's turn came swiftly. June 30th, 1934. A day intended for celebration, not execution. Karl Ernst stood on the docks of Bremerhaven, luggage in hand. Beside him stood his new bride and his friend Martin Kirschbaum, the man who had financed the trip. A ship waited to take them to Madeira. It was supposed to be a honeymoon, but the ship left without them. Before they could board, an arrest warrant arrived from Berlin. The trap snapped shut. Ernst was not merely detained. He was seized, beaten on the spot, and handed over to an SS commando unit. The leader was Kurt Gildisch, a man from Hitler's personal bodyguard detail. Why did they target him so viciously? Ernst was a true believer. But in the logic of the purge, loyalty was no shield. Gildisch's men did not hold back. They tortured Ernst during the transport. A special plane flew the prisoner to Berlin, landing on the tarmac of Tempelhof Airport. From there, guards dragged him to the SS barracks. He was 29 years old. Events accelerated. At 9:37 a.m., the end came. The death certificate recorded the exact minute. A firing squad from the Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler, the elite of the elite, lined up. But there was a glitch in the narrative. Radio broadcasts announced Ernst's execution hours before the shots actually rang out. The script was written before the actors had finished their parts. The footage of the era doesn't show this moment, but witnesses described it. Ernst stands against the wall. He is battered and bloodied. He believes this is a coup against Hitler. He thinks traitors are killing him. He raises his arm. He shouts, "Heil Hitler!" The volley fires. He died with the name of his murderer on his lips. Rumors spread instantly. People whispered that his wife had been liquidated alongside him. At first glance, a total erasure of the family. But in reality, she was spared. She was released from protective custody on July 14, 1934. She remained in Berlin, a silent witness to the regime, until her death in 1982. But for the rest of Germany, the message was clear. On July 13th, Hitler stood before the Reichstag. The camera records, rows of uniformed deputies listening in silence. Hitler justified the massacre. He claimed Ernst Röhm and General Schleicher were traitors conspiring with France. The parliament did not investigate. They retroactively declared the killings legal. Murder became an official act of state policy. The regime did not stop there. On August 1st, 1934, the cabinet passed a new law. It concerned the highest office in the land. The plan was simple. Upon the death of President Hindenburg, the presidency would cease to exist. It would merge with the chancellorship. The timing was precise. At 9 a.m. on August 2nd, the 87-year-old Hindenburg died at his estate in East Prussia. There was no pause for mourning. Within hours, Hitler proclaimed himself Führer of Germany. He now held absolute power. The army was the final obstacle. The audio archives preserve the sound of thousands of voices chanting in unison. Soldiers stand in formation. They do not pledge allegiance to the Constitution. They do not pledge allegiance to Germany. They swear unconditional obedience to Adolf Hitler personally. On August 19th, a referendum rubber-stamped the merger. The consolidation was complete. No one publicly mourned Karl Ernst. The Night of the Long Knives revealed the true mechanics of totalitarianism. Hitler murdered the very men who had beaten his enemies and terrorized the streets on his behalf. Loyalty means nothing when you become inconvenient. Thus ended the era of the stormtroopers.